It's one of these elements that people don't talk about enough. Is you talked about the choice of restarting as an IC to build credibility, and then later on switching back to engineering management. And so I think there's a big assumption, at least in sort of the circles that I travail, that you get into the engineering manager track and you're continually sort of like progressing and like increasing your scope and the teams that you're working with. This sort of decision to get back into being an IC and that comfort sort of working in that way. And so I was wondering if you talk a little bit about that decision and what that was like and what was present for you then.
So of course I talk about it as if like it's all planned, and and I had a phase one, a phase two, phase three, and I'm checking lists through those things. No, of course, life happens when you're planning for it. Once I made the decision to make a major switch from one company to another, and here I am in this environment, which is like completely new. Nobody knows me from Adam. Uh, I showed up to Facebook, and somebody asked me like, "What's my account, my email?" And I told them, "Oh, my email is something something at hotmail.com." And everybody went like, "Oh my God, somebody uses Hotmail. Can you show us what that like?" It's like when people think like, "Oh, I'm starting from zero." No, no, you're starting from -2, -3, something lower than that. So there was the whole part of like being in a new environment. Yes, there's lots of support for it, but then at the same time they're like, who are you, what are you doing, why should we trust you, you have experience, but yeah, this is technology, this experience probably is no longer relevant, the internet has changed, life has changed, um, and so I wanted to do two things. I wanted to learn as much as possible, and I wanted to not just figure out the technology, but like prove to myself that I still got it as an engineer. I wanted to build my own self confidence, or my own confidence in my own abilities, yet one more time, even though everything around me has changed. And I remember talking to my manager, and I said, "Well, I'll be in IC. Uh, you know, do you have a project for me?" And he goes, "Oh no, here's a bunch of projects you can choose. Come to the meeting where we're talking about the possible projects." And I looked at the bunch of the projects, and one of the project was called Go Rewrite. I'm like, okay, this is cool. It's a rewrite. It's a Go language. Uh, then the meeting was over, and I went to my manager and I said, "Yeah, I want to work on Go Rewrite." And he goes, "Oh, this is rewriting an endpoint from Ruby to Go language." I said, "Yes, that's what I want to do." He goes, "Have you ever written an endpoint before?" I said, "I'm actually curious to know what an endpoint is." And he goes, "Have you written anything in Ruby?" I'm like, "No, I've never seen the language before." He goes, "How about Go language?" I'm like, "Rapak just came up with Go language. Nobody knows it." And he's like, "So you know nothing?" I'm like, "I know nothing. I just want to be in a place where, either I sink or swim. And the best way for me to know this is to jump with both feet into the deep end." And that's actually what I started. I started with that, where I went and bought a book called Learn Go. And people's like, "You buying a book?" "No, no, everything's online." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, sure." Uh, bought another book about Ruby and Ruby on Rails and all that stuff, and I start looking into the code, and I start doing pair programming and all that stuff. And of course, in the first 3 weeks, I destroyed everything. The build, the release, the code does not work. None of my tests passed. And but after 3 weeks, it's like riding a bicycle. You get the hang of it, and you start riding it, and things got better. And went back to producing 300 lines of code per week, and sometimes more, which was great. And the best thing happened was like 6 months into it. We went back and said, "Okay, the code is ready, and we're ready to turn it on." And they're like, "What? Are you serious? You're gonna actually put your code in production?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're gonna make it happen." And of course, at that point, we learned that going from prototyping to production is a completely different story. But the point was here is, it took 6 months for me to say, hey, what I'm doing will actually go into impact many, many, many people. This is code that like a very small team wrote from scratch. So I learned how the new environment works. And then people stop looking at me like, who's this new guy? People start coming to me like, hey, can you write this for us? Can you do this for us? They start taking dependency on me, and that built my self confidence much higher. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, I am ready now. I have earned again how to be an engineering manager. And then to get back on that track. And I thought that was like a great, great way to prepare me to go help many other engineers in the next phase at my career at Facebook.